Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Ghana Ghanatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Ghana Ghanatam Praptasya Kalyana Gurnana Vasya Vande Gura Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gurnana Vasya Vande Gura Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasru Tarangavajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vindam Romanchakam Shri Vigrara Dhana Nityanana Shingaratanama Diramajanado Yuktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Bhavayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunja yuno rati kelisidyai Jayali bhir juktir apekshaniya Ne kunja yuno Tatrati daksha Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Sakyadharitena Shamasta Shastre Uktastathava Gataiva Sadhavi Sakyadharitena Kinto Pravarja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadan Nagati Kutapi Jayam Stuvam Tasya Yashastin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Dhyayam Stuvam Tasya Yasastrin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Yaraya Namah, Krishna Jadavaya Namah, Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudam Giridhari Gopinan Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghuna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Shri Radha Nilamadhav, Radha Nilamadhav Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo. ISKCON Pratishta Vividi Samstavkacharya Vaishnava Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prima Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana is Divine Grace Abhacharavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patitu Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Gunasat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Nanta Kuti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai Prem Si Kaho Si Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Si Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Premanama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinanda Nishman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaura Hari Mavarana Avatari Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jai Ki Jai Jogadharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Prihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shishya Radha Krishna Gopagopina Radha Kund Samakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Prajapim Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai The Lordship Shishya Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai Shishya Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakra Dham Ki Jai Parama Karuna Shishya Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smasvatra Devi Surashan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karun Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Bolo Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Sri Narasimhaya
Praladaladaine
Praladadaine
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha
Shilatanka nakalaye
Jaya Shilatanka nakalaye
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimho
Ito Nisingha Parata Nisingha
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha
Jata Jato Jami Tato Nisingha
Bahe Narsimho Hridaye Narsimho
Vahe Nisingha Hridaye Nisingha
Narasimhamadim Charanam Prapade
Narasingha Madim Sharanam Prapade
Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubhrangam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Abakara Kamala Bare Naka Adabhuta Shiva Dalita Hiranyakashipu Kanavinga Isabadita Nari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha
Keshavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Keshavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha
Jayo Narsimhadev Jayo Narsimhadev Jayo Narsimhadev Jayo Narsimhadev
Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare
Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jayo Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jayo Jaya Gurudev
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Swami ki Jai
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi शतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसीदेवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसीदेवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो हिया बिलासी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो हैया बेलासी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो हिया बिलासी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो हैया बेलासी।
ये तुम्हारा शरणलो तारा वंश पूर्ण हो
ये तुम्हारा शरण तारा वंश पूर्ण।
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी
तुम्हें कृपा कोरी करो करे वृंदावनवासी।
मोरा ये विलास कुंज दियो वा
मोराए विलास कुंज दियावा।
नायना हरि बो सदा युगल रूपरासी
हमें नयने रिवो सदा जुगल रूपरासी।
यही निवेदन दारा सकीरानुगाता कोरो
निवेदन धारा सकीर्यनो घटकार।
सेवाधिकारा दिए कोरो निज दासी
सेवायादि कर दिए करो निज दासी।
बिना कृष्ण दासे कोई ये न मोरा हो
कृष्ण दास को ए नमोरा।
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Nabasi.
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 Yani Kani Cha Papnani Brahmadyadi Kani Cha Tani Tani Pramya Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Tani Kani Sapapani Brahma Tari Kani Sa Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Yani Kani Cha Papnani Brahmadyadi Kani Cha Tani Tani Pramya Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Tani Kani Sapapani Brahma Tari Kani Sa Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priya Ke Saba Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satya Bhattai Namo Namah. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priya Ke Saba Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satya Bhattai Namo Namah. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavataye Namo Namah. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves with Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower, carry the hymns of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I love and Govinda. Shri Matti Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods and Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offered in Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even if understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikshastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanama Janam Bhavamala Vagnirvapanam Shreyakariva Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Anandam Vadivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Paramparam Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namnamakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamitta Shmaranena Kala Pita Rishitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrishamiya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagari Shakamai Mama Janmani Janmanishari Bhavata Bhakti Raituki Twai Oinandatanu Jakinkaram Paritamam Bisame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Dhuli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudaraya Vadanam Gadagarudhaya Gira Pulakari Chitam Papukada Tavanam Grahane Bhavisyati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakusha Pravishaitam Sunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Aslishabha Padaratam Pinashtumam Adarshnar Marmahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadatulam Pato Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kyastakam Ki Jai. Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurati Shinama. Namo Mahavaranyaya Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because its praise rays the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which all is anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules to chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and stroll in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some or other I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at the yellow of the sweet. O my Lord, when with my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name, when will my voice choke up and will the hairs of my body stand on end the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and it should remain so, even if sandals him rightfully by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shri Guru Vandan Mangala Charan Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Bandeyam Shri Guru Shri Jotapara Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Dalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Patsatyari Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshabhana Videvi Daitaya Kripabdai Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Daine Prabhave Nama Madhu Jojala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravani Shimurtai Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pusidanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Sakchavera Gyamurtaye Vipralambhara Sambodhe Paramujayate Namaha Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchit Anandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumitsvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannatayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha Panchatattvamakam Krishna Bhaktarupa Surupakam Bhaktavataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kantaradha Kantanamustute Jayatam Suratapangor Mama Mandamatir Gatir Matsarvasva Parambujo Radha Madanamono Divyavindaranya Kapadumadha Shmara Nagara Shingasanastu Shmaradha Shilagovindarevo Prishtali Vishevamana Shmara Sarasaram Bhivam Shwata Tatastita Karshan Venu Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shristuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrusavano Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Guru Vrandam Ki Jai.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om
Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presta Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauracharya Devi Sesa Sunivadi Bhaskati Dasitami Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. So today we're going to deviate again a little bit because there's a very, very important lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave and in 1976, August 1976, to a person whose name is Mike Robinson, and he works for the London Broadcasting Company, and he interviewed Srila Prabhupada in the temple in London, and it's a remarkable interview. Prabhupada's answers are superb, and I think it's very important that you hear this. So, Mike Robinson asks a lot of questions, and Prabhupada is answering them one by one. So his first question is, he says, can you tell me what you believe? What is the philosophy of the Hare Krishna movement? And Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is not a question of belief. It is a science. The first step is to know the difference between a living body and a dead body. What is the difference? The difference is that when someone dies, the spirit soul or the living force leaves the body, and therefore the body is called dead. So, there are two things. One, this material body, and the other, the living force within the material body. We speak of the living force within the body. That is the difference between the science of Krishna consciousness, which is spiritual, and ordinary material science. As such, in the beginning, it is very, very difficult for an ordinary man to appreciate our movement. One must first understand that he is a soul, or something other than his body. And this is a fantastic answer by Prabhupada. This actually brings into focus what Krishna consciousness is. It is not a religion. One second. it is not a religion, it is a science. And science, what does it mean? Science, real science, the real definition of science is that it is something that is true in the past, in the present, and the future. It's unchangingly true. That is real science. The science that we're getting today is a joke. All their so-called theories, they're changing all the time. And Krishna consciousness is not a mundane religion. What is a mundane religion? It's full of beliefs. Some are true and some are not true. Just like the Catholic Church and almost all Christians believe that animals don't have a soul. This is nonsense. What do you mean it doesn't have a soul? We'll get to that in a minute. So, therefore, there are mundane religions that have, and in those mundane religions, many false ideas have entered. But Krishna consciousness is not based on, I believe this or I believe that. It's a science. And what's science? Science is something that is true in all frames of reference and in all time, in the past, the present, and future. That is real science. So, now Prabhupada is going to explain that in depth. So he says, Krishna consciousness is not a question of belief. Okay, why do people use the word belief with religion? Okay, look up the definition of religion. It's important to know this and how misleading the dictionary can be at times. Many definitions in the dictionary are incomplete or false. Yeah, what's it say?
Raj, it is the belief in and
wait a minute, stop right there. The belief.
The belief.
You see? And Prabhupada immediately caught that and he said, Krishna consciousness is not belief. All right, go ahead, read it.
The belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods.
Yeah, it's not a question of belief. It's a science. Science, but science in the real definition of the word, something that is true in all frames of reference. It could be in the spirits world, it could be on the Deva planets, it can be on little planets like the Earth, it can be in the hellish planets, lower planets, it can be in the past, it can be in the present, it can be in the future. It's always true. It's not that sometimes it's true in certain circumstances. No. Real science is what is perfectly true in all frames of reference and in all times. That is real science. So what we have today that's called science is not really science because they're always changing their theories. And when we look at Christianity, there are a whole bunch of beliefs in Christianity that are not true. Like, for example, animals don't have a soul. That's one. I can go through a whole list of them, things that are not true in Christianity. And there are things like that in Islam and in Judaism also. Okay, so Prabhupada says, he says, the first step is to know the difference between a living body and a dead body. What is the difference? The difference is that when someone dies, the spirit soul or the living force leaves the body, and therefore the body is called dead. So there are two things. One, this body, and the other, the living force within the body. We speak of the living force within the body. That is a difference between the science of Krishna consciousness, which is spiritual, and ordinary material science. Yeah, ordinary material science ignores the existence of a soul and speculates what is the source of energy in the body. Some people say it's food. Some people say something in the heart. They don't know exactly what it is. Other people say it's oxygen. Other people say who knows what. Look up, what is the source of energy in the human body? Let's see what it is. See, you're going to see that there's a lot of misleading definitions in the dictionaries, and there's many different dictionaries. The other day, I showed you the difference between a definition in the Merriam-Webster dictionary as opposed to the Britannica. Go ahead. Or English. The dictionaries in England. Go ahead.
Energy comes from the three main nutrients.
What comes?
Energy
Yes.
comes from the three main nutrients: carbohydrates, protein, and fats.
Okay, they're talking about carbohydrates, protein, and fats.
With carbohydrates being the most important energy source. In cases where carbohydrates have been depleted.
Then why can't they inject carbohydrates, proteins, and what was the third thing?
Fats.
Fats into the dead body and bring it back alive? How come that doesn't work? If that's what's the source of energy in the body, why can't they? Just because they have the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats, they can inject it into the body and it should put the energy back into the body. You see, it's all nonsense. It's false, right? And the dictionary, many of the definitions of the dictionary are either incomplete or they're false. Many of them. So therefore, we're being misled even when we look up words in the dictionary. And not all the words are wrong, but some things, I've just pointed out 2 things, are wrong. Yeah. Okay, speak slower. Wait a minute, speak slower so I can understand what you said. I didn't understand your question. Speak slowly, word by word. Go ahead.
Yes, my answer, energy can...
Answer to what?
Means about energy.
What is the source of energy in the body?
Energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can be converted into one form to another form. So according to me, energy is a soul. If we will die, if we will get moksha or we will get a body, another means home. So energy is a soul.
But that's not what the dictionary says.
But science says, or science is also from dictionary, it's a definition, energy is neither be created nor be destroyed, it's converted into one form to another form.
They didn't say that in the dictionary. They said the source of energy, according to what he read just now in the dictionary,
It's a temporary
carbohydrates,
energy, material word energy.
proteins, and fat. It didn't say these carbohydrates, proteins, and fat can be transformed into spirit. So why do I ask to look words up in a dictionary? To show you that the dictionary definitions sometimes are misleading completely. Right? Like your kid goes to school, and your kid has to look up definitions. They have to learn the English language. So they look at, what is the source of energy in the body? And it says proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. It doesn't mention the soul, right? Why? I mean, in fact, modern science rejects the existence of a soul. So, therefore, you can't really get an education. You can't really get scientific knowledge today. You get a lot of theories. Most of them are false or incomplete. That is what Prabhupada is doing here. See, the man, he says, what's your belief? We say, wait, we don't have any belief. We have science. And then what does science mean? Science means something that is always true in the past, the present, and future. And it's true in every frame of reference. It could be in spiritual world, it can be in the material world, it can be on the Deva planets, it can be on the middle planets, it can be on the hellish planets. It's true everywhere. That's real science. We don't even understand the definition. Look at the definition of science. What's it say?
The systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained.
Evidence of what?
Evidence obtained.
Evidence of?
Obtained. Evidence obtained, Maharaj.
I'm not understanding that last word.
Obtained. Obtained. Obtained.
Obtained.
Obtained, yeah.
Obtained, okay. I didn't understand the way you were saying that word. Yeah. Okay. So, did it mention anything about a soul? You see my point? They don't accept the existence of a soul. So then how can they tell you something that's going to be true in all frames of reference and at all time? The definition of science is incomplete. They want to convince you that what they're saying is the complete truth, and it's not. It's false.
Based on evidence.
What evidence?
It's a systematic methodology.
Okay, well, they just said that the source of energy in the body is carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So when a person dies, why don't they inject those three things and bring them back to life if that's the only source of energy? You see my point? It's all misleading, and it's purposely done to create atheism. Okay, so now we continue. Now Mr. Robinson asks another question. He says, the Prabhupada said, one must first understand that he is a soul. Okay. And then or something other than this body. Okay, now Mr. Robinson says, and when will we understand that? Srila Prabhupada, you can understand at any moment, but it requires a little intelligence. For example, as a child grows, he becomes a boy. The boy becomes a young man. The young man becomes an adult, and the adult becomes an old man. Through all this time, although his body is changing from a child to an old man, he feels himself to be the same person with the same identity. Just see, the body is changing, but the occupier of the body, the soul, is remaining the same. So we should logically conclude that when our present body dies, we get another body. That is called transmigration of the soul. Okay, now it's a brilliant explanation by Prabhupada. In other words, the soul, the body is always changing, but there's something in the body that doesn't change. Well, let me ask this question. Okay, like for example, Prabhuji, do you remember when you were like this age of your son there? How old is he now? 4. Do you remember when you were 4 years old?
One or two memories.
What's that?
Like
Very little?
faintly. Yeah, yes.
All right. Do you remember when you were 6 years old?
Like same
Same.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you were 10 years old?
thing.
Same thing?
Yeah, like a little more, like about my class, about my
Okay.
friends.
So how old are you now?
32.
22. Now you're 22.
32.
32.
Yes.
At 32, do you feel that you're the same person that was in the body when you were 4, 6, 12, 16, 20, 25, 32? Or do you think that you're a different person now?
So like my body has changed. Like I feel that my body has changed. I feel that my thoughts have like grown.
Yes.
But like I'm like same. Like
Yeah, you're the same person. You witnessed all those changes.
yes.
So when that's the difference between the seer and the seen. You are the seer, and the body is the seen. That means there's a difference between those two things. And you still feel that you're the same person that was in that little body and now in this body. Right? So basically, that's what Prabhupada's saying here. That you can understand at any moment, but it requires a little intelligence. For example, as a child grows, he becomes a boy. The boy becomes a young man. The young man becomes an adult. And the adult becomes an old man. Throughout all this, although his body is changing from a child to an old man, he still feels himself to be the same person with the same identity. Just see, the body is changing, but the occupier of the body, the soul, is remaining the same. So we should logically conclude that when our present body dies, we get another body. This is called transmigration of the soul, or reincarnation. Okay? So, does this make sense to you? You've changed your body already many times. Where is that body you had when you were 6 years old? It's dead. It's dead. It's not there anymore. It died. And the body you have right now is alive, right? But it's changing. And we've gone over this previously. Every day, a huge number of blood cells die, and they're replaced by new cells. Well, look that up. How many blood cells die per day in a human being? So you'll see the body is changing every day. Every day we're changing our body. But over a period of time, there's a major change that we see. The change that happens every day, we don't notice it that much. Right? What does it say? There's the microphone. Wait a minute. He's the one going to answer.
10 to the power of 11 cells die in.
Okay, 10 to the power of 11 zeros, right? Yes. Can you say what number that is? Okay, so 3 zeros is thousands, and 6 zeros is millions.
Maharaj, you written your body makes
What?
about
What?
your body makes about 2 million new red cells every second.
2 million new red cells. Okay, now look at how many red blood cells there are in the body. You're going to say, I mean, this is science, right? We're not making any of this up. This is what the scientists know. Now we're using what they know to explain and help us explain what we know. Go ahead.
A normal range in adults is generally considered to be 4.35 to 5.65 million red blood cells
Wait
per.
a minute. You said it so fast, I didn't understand anything.
Okay, Maharaj. A normal range.
In normal what?
Normal range
Range, okay.
in adults
Adults.
is generally considered to be 4.35 to 5.65 million red blood cells per microliter MCL of a blood for a man, and 3.92 to 5.13 million red blood cells per MCL of blood for women.
Okay, anyway, it's a large number. and every day you're producing okay. 6 zeros is million. And then 3 more, 6 and 3, 9 zeros is billion, right? And then 12 zeros is trillion. Okay? So there was 11 zeros? Yeah. Okay. 100 billion every second, right? Is it every second? Huh? Per day. Okay. And the total amount of blood cells is how much? That'll run way past trillions. Okay. So you see, you're changing your body almost every day. You are, it's changing, but you don't notice that's those small changes. But after a period of time, you see there's a major change, right? So we've already had many bodies, and they're all dead, and we're still alive, we're still in a body, but it's different than the bodies that already died, right? So it makes sense. That's why Prabhupada says it's logical. Just see, the body is changing, but the occupier of the body, the soul, is remaining the same. So we should logically conclude that when our present body dies, we get another body. This is called transmigration of the soul, or reincarnation. Now, what kind of body are we going to get next? That's also explained in depth in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. We can get either another material body, which would be one among the 8,400,000 different species, or we could get our spiritual body and go back to Godhead. Either way. Depends on what our karma is. So now Mr. Robinson asks another question. He says, so when people die, is it just the physical body that dies? Srila Prabhupada, yes. That is explained very elaborately in the Bhagavad Gita 2.20. Najayate mriyate vakadachin nayam bhutva bhavata bhuya. So he says, Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. He says, for the body there's neither birth nor death, nor at any time does it come into being, nor does it stop being. In other words, the soul is eternal. The body is temporary, but the soul is eternal. So this is a very important verse in Bhagavad Gita 2.20. Najayate mriyate vakatachin nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya ajo nitya sastvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane saride. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So, this is the science now of the soul, or Atma Tattva. There's the science of the body, and there's the science of the soul. Okay, so after hearing that, Mr. Robinson says, do you often quote references? Prabhupada, yes, we quote many references. Krishna consciousness is a serious education. It's a serious education. What you're getting in school is not serious education. It's junk. Right? Where does junk go? It goes into they have these junkyards, right? So when your car becomes a junk, it goes into the junkyard. That's what education is today, is junk, right? But this is real education. So it says, Krishna consciousness is a serious education, not an ordinary religion. And then he says, look up this verse, Najayate mriyate vakadachin. And then they read the definition of it. They read that verse. So Mr. Robinson then next says, thank you very much for reading that. So can you explain to me just a bit more? If the soul is undying, does everybody's soul go to be with God when they die? Srila Prabhupada, not necessarily. If one is qualified, he qualifies himself in this life to go back home, back to Godhead. Then he can go. In other words, you have to be qualified, right? Just like you can't get into college unless you're qualified. You can't get a job unless you're qualified. And you can't go back to Godhead unless you're qualified. If the soul is undying, does everybody's soul go to be with God when they die? Prabhupada, not necessarily. If one is qualified, if he qualifies himself in this life to go back home, back to Godhead, then he can go. If he does not qualify himself, then he gets another material body. And there are 8,400,000 different bodily forms. According to his desires and karma, the laws of nature will give him a suitable body. It is just like when a man contracts some disease and then develops that disease. Is that difficult to understand? Mr. Robinson, it's very difficult to understand all of it. Srila Prabhupada. Suppose somebody contracts smallpox. So after 7 days, he develops the symptoms. What is that period called, that 7-day period? The word is incubation. You contract, you get a disease like smallpox or you get COVID, but you don't see the symptoms right away. But after a couple days, you get the symptoms. Then you know somehow or other you contacted that disease. That period between when you contacted it and when the symptoms become visible is called incubation. Incubation means, like for example, when a mother bird wants her baby bird eggs to hatch, right, and then the baby bird is born, she sits on them. And by sitting on them in the nest that she made, she keeps them warm. That's called incubation. The baby is there in the egg, but it hasn't grown big enough to break through the shell and come out. So there's an incubation period. So the period between when you contract a disease and when it becomes, let's say, developed, it's called a period of incubation. Right? And usually you get a fever during that period. Gradually you get a higher fever. What does it mean to have a fever? When you get a fever above 96.8 degrees, right? It goes up to 101 or 102 or sometimes 107, which is very dangerous. You could die. It means that your body is fighting a disease. That's why the body increases its temperature to try and kill the disease germs. See? And there's a fight going on. Okay, so now, so he says, incubation. So Prabhupada says, so you cannot avoid it. If you have contracted some disease, it will develop by nature's law. Okay, what does that mean by nature's law? That means that everybody is going to experience in this life birth, death, old age, and disease. And diseases are contracted because of poor, let's say, health conditions. But then it doesn't manifest right away. It'll take a little bit of time, and then the symptoms come. So he says, this is nature's law. Nature's law means we are all going to get sick. You can't avoid it. We're all going to get old. You cannot avoid it. And we're all going to die. We cannot avoid it. And we're all going to take birth again, either in a material body or we go back to Godhead in our spiritual body. Okay? So, Prabhupada says, so you can't avoid it. If you have contracted some disease, it will develop by nature's law. Similarly, during this life, you associate with various modes of material nature, and that association will decide what kind of body you are going to get in the next life. That is strictly under the laws of nature. Now, this is a very important statement. That means every one of us is controlled by the 3 modes of material nature. The 3 modes of material nature are sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are supernatural, let's say, supernatural supernatural influences that control our body and affect our mind. And they're under the control of the devatas. Well, at least 2 of them are. Brahma controls rajas, Shiva controls tamas, but Vishnu controls sattva. So, but Vishnu, you could say, is acting something like a demigod, but he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But which Vishnu are we talking about? We're talking about Shirodakshaya Vishnu. Right? Okay, so it says here that our next body is going to be determined by the various modes of material nature that we're influenced by. Now, those modes are fluctuating every day. So let's say when we're sleeping, we're in the mode of tamas, ignorance. And when we wake up, we begin to become active. That's the mode of rajas. We have to do things. We have to make some coffee or cook some breakfast or take a bath. We have to prepare our homework, or we have to prepare our deliverables for our team leader, or we have to, go to work. And then when we go to work, it's very rajasic. We got to do this, we got to do that. We have this deliverable to deliver in the next week or so, and we have to work overtime to do it. So it's rajasic. And then sometimes we can experience a little bit of sattvic. It's time to eat lunch, but you brought a vegetarian lunch. That is sattvic, right? And it was offered to Krishna. That's good. Or you brought, a meat lunch with onion and garlic and vinegar and some beer. Well, that is tamasic. See? So we're getting influenced every day, and it's fluctuating. There might be some little bit of goodness, but mostly, for most people, it's rajasic and tamasic, and mainly tamasic. Right? So you can tell which mode of nature a person is in. Just look at what's on their plate when they're eating. You'll know right away whether it's rajasic or tamasic. Very, very seldom is it sattvic. Now you might say, oh, but my friend only ate salad. That must be sattvic. Not necessarily. Did they offer it to Krishna? No. Therefore, what does it say in Bhagavad Gita? Let's look at this. Now we're answering a very interesting question, right? It says in Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, Yajna sistastina santo muchyante sarva kilbasai bunjate te twagam papa ye pachanti atmakaranat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So, the vegetarian, vegan, who eats a big salad for lunch, that's not in the mode of goodness because they didn't offer it to Krishna. So it's considered a sin to eat food like that that's not offered. You see, just because it's vegetarian doesn't mean it is sattvic. There's another element that has to be there. It has to be offered to the Lord. See? And usually they'll put some garlic in it, they'll put a little onion in it, they'll put some vinegar. All these things are tamasic. Okay. Then Prabhupada says, although the body is changing from a child to an old man, he still feels himself to be the same person with the same identity. Just see, the body is changing, but the occupier of the body, the soul, is remaining the same. So we should logically conclude that when our present body dies, we get another body. This is called the transmigration of the soul. So then the question is, so when people die, is it just a physical body that dies? Srila Prabhupada, yes. That is explained very elaborately in the Bhagavad Gita 2.20. Then next he says, if the soul is undying, does everybody's soul go to be with God when they die? That's Mike Robinson's question. Prabhupada says, not necessarily. If one is qualified, if he qualifies himself in this life to go back home, back to Godhead, then he can go. If he does not qualify himself, then he gets another material body. And there are 8,400,000 different bodily forms according to his desires and karma. The laws of nature give him a suitable body. It is just like when a man contracts some disease and then develops that disease. Is that difficult to understand? Mike Robinson, it's very difficult to understand all of it. Srila Prabhupada. Suppose somebody has contracted smallpox, so after 7 days he develops the symptoms. What is that period called? Incubation. Srila Prabhupada, incubation. So you cannot avoid it. If you have contracted some disease, it will develop by nature's law. Similarly, when he says nature's law, what does it mean? It means that we are subject, the number one law of nature. Everyone, doesn't matter if they're Muslim, Jew, Christian, Hindu, atheist, Buddhist, nudist, Sikh, or Jain, or whatever, right? They're going to experience the same thing. Birth, old age, disease, and death. You cannot avoid it. It's the law of nature, right? The first law. There are many other laws. We'll go over those as we continue. So, he says, similarly, during this life, you associate with various modes of material nature, and that association will decide what kind of body you are going to get in the next life that is strictly under the laws of nature. Everyone is controlled by the laws of nature. They're completely dependent. But out of ignorance, people think that they are free. They are not free. They're imagining that they are free, but they are completely under the laws of nature. So your next birth will be decided according to your activities, sinful or pious, as the case may be. Now, this is real preaching. You want to be a preacher, you want to be able to convince people, just like in our play, right? At one point, the young boy is seeing a dream, and he sees Hanuman in the dream. And Hanuman comes, and he convinces him that Darwinism is nonsense, and that Krishna consciousness is good sense. Is that right? Yeah. Of course, the explanations that Prabhuji gave, they were okay, but it wasn't enough to convince a person in the audience. Let's say an American is watching a play and say, well, that guy didn't convince me that I have a soul and that Darwinism is false. So there would have to be more information. Yeah, because that's the core of the play, right? That one scene is the core of the play. And although, it was very interesting, but it was not strong enough to convince a person who's watching this play, like say an American, that Darwinism is nonsense. So you have to develop that, Okay, so I like that play, and I want to see it done more, right? But that one part has to be worked on. Right? Okay, so you have to know this to be able to convince someone. So, what are the laws of nature? Now, I have a whole paper here, laws of nature. It's going to be the next panel. Right? This is very important to understand what the laws of nature are. So the first one is, all living entities experience the recurring cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. Only human beings have the possibility of freeing themselves from this vicious cycle by completely surrendering to God, Lord Krishna, and following his instructions. However, if human beings reject God and his instructions, this cycle is repeated over and over again as long as the human being has the desire to dominate and exploit the material nature selfishly without regard for God. Well, that's the whole theme of modern education. Reject God. Why? Because they say, look, we can't scientifically validate the existence of God. Therefore, for us, God is not pertinent. We don't believe that there's a God. We don't believe that there's a spiritual world. Ask a science teacher. You're teaching this science. Does it include the soul and God? What do you think the answer would be? You're studying to be a teacher, right? What would you answer? What would you answer? I mean, if you say, no, I believe in God, they'll fire you. You'll lose your job. You're not allowed to answer that question. You tell me if that's true or not.
The thing is, they don't even want to talk about God.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about
Yeah,
God.
there's absolutely
Forbid it.
exactly, yes.
Yeah. You see? So you send your kid to a school like that where the teachers are forbidden to talk about God. Oh, but wait a minute. They'll talk about the God of the American Indian. And, playing their little drum, and they'll say, well, they believe in the big spirit, right? That they allow. Is that true?
Well, at least in their school, there was a play at the Christmas time, and it was talking about what is good, what is not so good. But I was watching if they would say any word about soul or
No.
God or even Christ or Jesus. Nothing at all. So,
See, when I went to school, I remember the day when the teachers were no longer allowed to speak about God. So every day when I went to school, the first thing was we would read the Bible. It didn't matter who was in the school. In the school I went to, most of the students were Jewish. And I was a Christian. So, and the Jewish boys, when they read from the Old Testament, they sort of, liked it. When they read from the New Testament, they didn't like it at all, right? And the day that the federal government mandated that you cannot read the Bible anymore in school, there was a day, I think it was 1963 or 4. And see, the teacher was not only a teacher, he was also a minister, a Christian minister, right? So he came in that day, and all the Jewish boys were laughing and making jokes about he can't say anything anymore. He can't read the Bible anymore, and he was really upset, So one of the boys who was making fun of him like that, he said, okay, Stein, go and open the window. So Stein goes over and tries to open the window. He can't. And the teacher comes and said, Hail Jesus. The window went up. He said, you see, Stein, when you don't believe in God, you're weak. I mean, he was really fuming mad that day because he couldn't read the Bible anymore. And that has changed a lot. That has changed a lot. I mean, even though we might be a Muslim, or we might be a Jew, or we might be a Christian, or we might be an atheist, that reading the Bible every day was very good. At least it gave us something, some idea of God, right? They wiped it out completely. And up until today, it's still wiped out. Yeah, go ahead.
not just in the education system, even in the yoga world, they don't want.
Even in what?
Yoga world.
Yoga.
Yoga, the Ashtanga yoga world.
No. They can't talk about God.
They
always say our yoga has nothing to do with religion. Yeah.
I was really shocked when I was undergoing a teacher training, and they asked a question: is yoga a religion? And I was shocked to hear that question.
Yeah.
And they just talk about there is a higher consciousness. Other than that, there's not much, because people don't want to hear the word God.
Right. Yeah, they'll say, well, if you try and teach me about God, I'm not coming to this yoga class anymore. 62, yeah, I said 63, 64, right? Is it, or around that time. Yeah, so you see, before that, they were reading the Bible every day in school. And, I mean, I wasn't a devotee at that time, but it was a good thing. There was some lesson every day. Even in India, if you send your kid to a Christian school, they'll read the Bible before the class starts. Okay, so this first law of nature is that there's a recurring cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. And only human beings have the possibility to free themselves from this cycle. Animals can't, plants can't, the birds can't, the insects can't, etc. Only the human being can. And they're all souls, or the animals, the birds, they all have souls, but they're not developed yet to the level of a human being, which has all the, let's call it, highly developed senses, knowledge acquiring senses, to understand this higher order spiritual knowledge. Okay, so therefore, if a human being ignores this ability to become Krishna conscious, it's sinful to ignore it, and therefore they suffer unnecessarily. They're making one sin after another based on false knowledge. Animals have no soul. There's nothing after death. There's no God. There's no spiritual world. You're not dependent on God. You're independent. All these things that they teach you today are wrong, and it causes people to suffer unnecessarily. Okay, so there's like, how many is it? At least 40 points of laws of material nature, but I'm not going to read them all now. Okay, so next it says, Mr. Robinson says, Your Grace, could you go back over that just for a minute? You said that nobody is free? Are you saying that if we live a good life, we in some way determine a good future for ourselves? Srila Prabhupada, yes. Mr. Robinson, so we are free to choose what we believe to be important? Religion is important because if we believe in God and lead a good life, and Prabhupada stops him there, it says, it is not a question of belief. That was the first point he made right in the beginning. He says, it's not a question of belief. Do not bring in this question of belief. It is law. For instance, there is a government. You may believe or not believe in the government. But if you break the law, you will be punished by the government, whether you believe or you don't believe. Similarly, whether you believe or don't believe, there is a God. If you don't believe in God and you independently do whatever you like, then you will be punished by the laws of nature. Whoa. Prabhupada is not being, let's say, wishy-washy here. He's not letting him get away with this word believe. Okay, so then, just a little more and we'll stop. So it says, Mr. Robinson says, I see. Does it matter what religion you believe? Would it matter if one was a devotee of Krishna? Srila Prabhupada, it is not a question of religion. It is a question of science. You are a spiritual being, but because you are materially conditioned, you are under the laws of material nature. So you may believe in the Christian religion, and I may believe in the Hindu religion, but that does not mean that you are going to become that does not mean that you are going to become an old man, and I am not going to get old, right? We're talking of the science of growing old. In other words, saying this is natural law. Everyone is going to get old. Everyone is going to die. It has nothing to do with what you believe, and it has nothing to do with what your religion is. Okay? It is not that because you are a Christian, you are becoming old, or because I am Hindu, I am not becoming old. Everyone is becoming old. So similarly, all the laws of nature are applicable to everyone. Whether you believe in this religion or that religion, it doesn't matter. Whew. So, we're going to get to these laws of material nature. It's just shocking what those laws are. And everyone is ignorant of it. And because of that, everyone is suffering today. Look what's happening in California. It's unbelievable what's happening. They were having so many droughts, right? Now they're having this tsunami of rain, right? And it's flooding everything, and people are suffering. It's going to affect the farming, everything, right? And why is it happening? Because even though California was the first state to say, we don't care if the government is not allowing government supported and paid for what do you call it? Abortion. California is the first state that made abortion legal in the state. Right. As soon as they made that resolution that the government's not going to support the abortion anymore, he came out and said, you can all come here. We'll give it to you for free. Right? He's a demon. Gavin Newsom is a demon. It's not Gavin Newsom. It's Gavin Nuisance. He's nonsense. He's not a real governor. He's a what you would call a person who has an agenda to destroy religion. That's who he is. And look what's happening to his state. And he's helpless. He can't do anything to stop it. It just shows that he's not independent. He's not actually a leader. Why do these things happen? Because wherever there's a high amount of atheism, you have all these problems that take place. Okay, so we're going to stop right there, and we'll continue tomorrow. Are there any questions? Krishna consciousness is science. It is not a belief. It's not, it's theories. It's dealing with the laws of nature.
That's the angle that we need to stress upon. Even in the play, I think we can bring that aspect.
Yes.
It's not just a religion, it's not a belief system.
No.
It's a scientific way of living based on the laws of nature and creation.
Yeah.
Like speculation.
Yeah, you can believe anything. You can believe there's little green people on the moon. Nobody's ever going to go there to see if there are or not, but you believe it. Just like Reverend, what's his name, the leader of the black Muslims. He believes that there's a spaceship going around the earth only for black Muslims. So when there's going to be a war and a big fight, all the Muslims will go into that spaceship and it'll take them somewhere else. I don't know where. And he teaches that. What's his name? Huh? Yeah, F something. Farrakhan or something like that. He's the leader of the black Muslims in the United States. He teaches them that there's a spaceship. God has sent us a spaceship. It's going around, and one of these days we'll all get into it, and everybody else will die, but the Muslims will be okay. This is all nonsense stuff, right? But people believe it. So when you talk about belief, you can believe anything. No, it's Krishna consciousness is science. It's not belief. And it's science with the real definition of the word. It's true in all frames of reference and at all time, past, present, and future. Okay, yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I have a question. This is like during the drama, I have that question, haunting question. Like,
Can you speak a little bit louder and slower?
will all souls go back to Godhead one day?
Oh, it's possible, yeah. No, wait a minute. There's two possibilities. because you have an eternal soul, it's possible you could stay eternally in the material world if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, birth after birth. And every time you make a mistake, you'll go back into lower forms, and it'll take a long, long time to come back to the human form. So because the soul is eternal, it is possible to stay eternally in the material world and suffer. But because the soul is eternal, if you make the right decisions, once you have a human body, you can go back to God. Does that answer your question? What people are doing is they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Then you go back into the lower forms of life, and it takes you millions of years to come back to the human form. And then if there's a pralaya, then you have to wait hundreds and billions of years before there's a next creation. You see? So the whole situation is horrible. That's why now you've come to the human form of life. You should use it. Not abuse it, but use it to be Krishna conscious. And if you don't, there's a very good chance you go back into the animal or less than animal form. And you have to wait so many years and suffer so much to come back again to the human form of life. It's a tragedy. But of course, none of this is explained to people, you know. And people think, oh, I'm independent, and there's nothing after death, so I don't have to worry about it, you know. I won't. It's complete nonsense. Okay.
I have a follow-up question. Then how could Ravana get moksha? Because Lord Rama...
Ravana was not an ordinary person. He was Jagai, not Jagai Madai, but Jaya and Vijaya. The Jaya and Vijaya took 3 births as demons. So there was Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, then there was Ravana, and Sisupala, and then there was No, I'm sorry. It was not Ravana and Sisupala. It was Ravana and who was the other one? Maybe. I forget. And then the next one was Sisupala and somebody else. I'm not sure. So Ravana is not an ordinary person. What's that? Speak slowly. Slow. But speak slowly. Okay. Asti. Is that slow?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yeah, Ravana is just a watchman of Krishna. Sometimes some Sant Mahatma came or some type of a story. Then they said, no, I will not allow to go inside. So that's why they give a shrap. Means you sadhu, because they are great bhakt, they said, you will also not allow to meet to God. So from that time he become a Dawad, and he also knows about that. And is 1,000 plus years ago above and compared to Ram in earth. And because if he will die with Ram, then he will get again his position. So that was the story, whatever little bit I know. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. All right, so we'll stop there. Oh, one more question. 2 more questions. Whoa.
Maharaj, it's not related to today's lecture.
What?
But the question is not related to today's lecture. But this question came up during reading the Bhagavad Gita verses. The question about the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not favoring the women come in front of him or allowing. Then some of the women have the conception that Mahaprabhu did not allow men, so I don't believe in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I don't worship. So how should we answer for those
Well, no,
women?
they don't know. They don't know Lord Chaitanya. For example, Lord Chaitanya would go every day to have darshan of Jagannath, right? And he would stand next to the Sumba column, which is near Lord Jagannath. One day a lady came, jumped up on his shoulders to see Jagannath. And the devotees around him were all shocked, and Lord Chaitanya stopped him. He said, no, she has this ecstasy to see Jagannath, so she can stand on my shoulder. See? So the point is, he didn't let women come near him because he's a sannyasi. Sannyasis should not have any close association with women. It's not that he hates women. And why did he stop them from getting that lady off his back? Because she was in ecstasy for Jagannath. So she was not an ordinary woman. She was somebody who was a genuine devotee. So he tolerated that. So, but look, a person who says what you just said, it's because they don't know anything about Lord Chaitanya. And it's all because you don't know enough about Lord Chaitanya to explain to them.
I haven't read Chaitanya Charitamrita yet, Maharaj.
Then why did they ask you that question? You're
It's
reading
in the
Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, first verse, where Prabhupada talks about purification.
Well, the 16th chapter, first 3 verses, are a description of a pure devotee.
Yeah.
And explains the qualities of a pure devotee, and it gives examples. So
Yeah.
they talk about Lord Chaitanya there?
Yes, Maharaj. Prabhupada talks about the qualities of the qualities related to sannyasi. And the first one is a fearlessness, and then if you keep going, and then there is a purification. So then the question is, if Mahaprabhu is incarnation of Krishna, and if he's a sannyasi, and a sannyasi is supposed to be fearless, so
Okay,
fearless.
so here it is. It says, for a sannyasi, intimate relations with women and possession of wealth for sense gratification are strictly forbidden. The ideal sannyasi was Lord Chaitanya himself, and we can learn from his life that he was very strict in regards to women. Although he is considered to be the most liberal incarnation of Godhead, accepting the most fallen conditioned souls, he strictly followed the rules and regulations of the sannyasa order of life in connection with association with women. One of his personal associates, named Chota Haridasa, was associated with Lord Chaitanya along with his other confidential personal associates. But somehow or other, this Chota Haridasa looked lustily on a young woman, and Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he at once rejected him from the society of his personal associates. Lord Chaitanya said, for a sannyasi, or anyone who is aspiring to get out of the clutches of material nature and trying to elevate himself to the spiritual nature and go back home, back to Godhead, for him, looking toward material possessions and women for sense gratification, not even enjoying them, but just looking toward them with such a propensity, is so condemned that he had better commit suicide before experiencing such illicit desires. So these are the processes for purification. So it's not that Lord Chaitanya hates women. Because he took sannyas, he's following the sannyas rules and regulations. Sannyasis are not supposed to have any close relationship with women. That doesn't mean he rejects them. He gives them the same opportunity to engage in Krishna consciousness, or you see how Prabhupada, he lets women worship the deity. In India, the women can't worship the deity, or very few women can worship the deity. But here, and then women can give class and they can do so many different things. So women are not excluded in Krishna consciousness, but what's excluded is men looking with lust at a woman, right? Or trying to be too intimate with women. So therefore, men and women, and we allow men and women to live together in the temple, like Rasavati lives here, right? We don't say she can't live here because she's completely engaged in devotional service. And we have myself and Parth and other men here, but we all get along very well, and there's no nonsense going on. And because our whole goal is to serve the deity. It's not to serve our sense gratification. So for sannyasis, they have to very strictly not try and seek close association with women. But you can get married. You don't have to be a sannyasi. You can get married. You can have children. And the women, even if their husband takes sannyas, they can continue to stay in temples and do service. There's no, but that inappropriate mixing, especially for sannyasis, is not allowed. That's all.
And our answer should be Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is exhibiting the strict oath that sannyas should have. It doesn't mean that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't want women to come. Yeah, hate the women. Yeah, that's the right word.
All right, let's stop now and have Aarti. And we'll have more of this tomorrow. You want to sing? Shri Guru Charana Padma
Kevala Bhagati Sadama Bando Mui Savadhana Mate.
Start all over again. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mui Savadhana Mate.
Bando Mui Savadhana Mate.
Jahara Prasade Bhaye E Bhava Toriya Jaye.
Janar Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai.
Krishna Prapti Hoye Jaha Hoite.
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite.
Guru Mukh Padma Vakya Chitte Te Korya Kya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Korya Kya.
Arna Kori Ho Mane Asa.
Arana Koriya Mane Asa.
Sri Guru Nu Charane Rati Eise Uttama Gati.
Shri Guru Charan Rati Aise Uttama Gati
जे प्रसादे पूरे सर्वे आसा
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Sa
चक्षुदान दिलो जे में जन्मे प्रभु से
Chakshudan Dilaje Janme Janme Prabhu Se
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
Divya Gyan de Prakasito
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जते
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate
वेद गाए जहाँ राचरियो
Vedega Janara Charito
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनरा बंधु
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवना
Lokanath Lokera Jivana
हाँ हाँ प्रभु कोरो दोया देहो मोरे पदा छाया
Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Padachaya
इबे जस घुसुक त्रिभुवना
Ebe As Kusukji Bhuvana
जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
नमो विष्णुपदाय न पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी नीति नमीने
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चायता देशतरिणे
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Vasyatya Desadarine
चैतन्या प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंदा
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda
जय श्री हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora, Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajakacha Tara Satara Shri Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatyada Zatarani Haribo. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain toward devotion. First, I got it. Ocean of material suffering and attain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus feet.